Hi everyone, I'm Susan with Tail Quilting and Stitching. Welcome to my channel. This is the second video that I have done. On the 4th of July, I did my first video. So if you're viewing again, thank you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Today, I'm going to be kind of talking about how I fold and store my fat quarters. I have been quilting since 1997, and I have acquired a lot of fat quarters from collecting from my stash. I have, in fact, all of my collection is reproductions. So that's kind of what I've kept on hand, mostly. So I have organized mine by color, not so much as groupings, although some of them I have kept in groupings of the little bundles that have been coming out. But I will show you how I store them and organize them. I kind of used what I have. I have a couple of chest of drawers that I kind of use and make kind of modified how I store them, and I'll show you how I do that. And also I have kind of in some containers also in kind of a cupboard, and along with some of them I have on display. And I can show you how I do that too. So there's many ways to store them, but I'm just going to give you a few today. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll get started. So here we are in what used to be a bedroom, but I now use it for my quilting space, and it holds a lot of my fabric and my sewing things, and I will be giving you more of a tour of all of it in coming videos when I do my quilt room tour, and also to kind of show how I do store my fabric in yardage on boards. So here is the chest of drawers that I use to store my fat quarters. I have 2 of them in here, and you can see that I have my pinks in this one. I'll try to get over here, not to be too shaky. I have my pinks in this one, and the other one I have my blues. But in the top drawer I also have my lavenders, and I don't really have as many lavenders as I have pinks and blues. So I'll kind of show you this drawer here. So what I've done is I've kind of folded them so they're kind of all in a line. But what I have used for my dividers, taking these out, is foam board. The kind that we've been making our design boards out from Lori Holt's pattern. And these ones are the smaller size. They're 16 by 20, and they come in a package of 3. And I've used these, and I'll show you the package in a few minutes. I've used these because they're easier to cut. I cut them out with my large rotary cutter. And I've cut these to the length of my dresser, which is 15, so I only had to cut an inch off. And then I cut them 5 inches high, so I could get the most out of each foam board, which was 16 by 20. So I got 4 of these out of one poster board. But then they really do tuck very easily back in. Right there. Tuck right back in there. And they make a nice divider. So when you want to go through your fabric and kind of choose a print, it's very easy to do. Now I'll show you the other dresser. So here is the other dresser with my blues, and I have them set up very similar. And then I have one little bit of a start on the lavenders. I have the other drawer full, but on this drawer, just this one. And I use my large rotary cutter and my ruler on my cutting mat to cut the foam board, and it cuts very easily. And here is what they look like in the package. So you can kind of easily see that. So I kind of want to show you just this whole dresser. On top I have a couple of my toy sewing machines. So it makes it quite easy to store your fat quarters this way. I wanted to show the top two drawers also of my dresser. I use them to store my scissors and rotary cutters. And you can see by this drawer, I have my scissors and embroidery scissors. And the drawer next to it, I have my cutting shears. And there's a pair of pinking shears also. And I cut, batting with the scissors out. Don't use them a lot, but when you need them, they come in handy. And on the top of my dresser is two of my Singer toy sewing machines. Here is the other dresser in the other corner of the room. And in the top two drawers there are my rotary cutters. I have a rotary cutter that I just used for paper and like cutting the foam board that I don't use for, I kind of mark that I don't use for my fabric. And then I also have one that I have like a little pinking shears on, and sometimes when I want to cut a piece of fabric or to use as decoration or for a tie, sometimes when I wrap a gift or give a gift, I cut a strip of fabric instead of getting ribbon. And I'm going to show you that probably too coming up when I kind of maybe do a video on the fun little gifts you can give to your quilting friends. And if you're in a quilt group like I am, I'm in a quilt group, and we're called the Quilting Bees, and we've been meeting together, oh gosh, since I started quilting. But I have some really fun ideas for that as well, and have it's always kind of fun to have something cute to do for your quilting friends that you can use for quilting and that are kind of handy. And on top of that dresser is two more of my Singer toy sewing machines. So here are the dressers, just plain. I have one in one corner. And then I have a bookcase that I kind of put some of my things on. Top you see a couple of Muffy Bears with some fat quarter bundles, and I have another toy sewing machine that's electric, a little orange one. I have two of these. One a friend gave me as a gift, with some fat quarter bundles and jelly roll strips that I have kind of put in some Pyrex bowls that I really love to collect. And I have my little Muffy Bear and the little raincoat and a couple of other sets of Pyrex nesting bowls. And on the bottom shelf you'll see another Singer toy sewing machine with a little case, fat quarter bundles, and a pair of roller skates. And here in the corner, on the other corner, is the other dresser with the fat quarters, with two of my other Singer sewing machine toys. So, and that's my walk-in closet that I'll be going to do another video on to show how I store my yardage on boards and keep tags on the yardage to know how much I have in each bin. I'm coming into my sewing room. This is a little bumpy, try not to be. But I have a little hutch, and it was probably for a dining room or kitchen, but I like to use pieces that really not necessarily are just made for sewing, but I can use for sewing in a different way. That also has little displays on them or storage. So I necessarily don't always try to find something that is just for sewing and quilting, but use pieces that maybe are not for. And I've had this in other places in my house, but I thought, gee, I could use that in my sewing room. So it was moved. So I'll open up these bottom drawers here, and it has great storage. And it's not, not something that you can see all the time, but that's good too if you don't really want anything out. So what I have down here in this area, I have my fat quarters, and they are in containers. These are from Michael's, and these seem to work well for this space that I have. And so I can get a lot of fat quarters in these containers, and then they stack pretty well where I have them. So I have my greens, and I have my yellow, and some reds. And now I do have some reds on top of another bookcase, and I can show you that in a little while. But so this is kind of where the rest of my fat quarters are. I do have smaller pieces that I have cut up into different sizes, and I'm going to go over that too. Hopefully maybe I can do that in this video. If not, I will certainly get to that in another time. But this is the fat quarters, and I'm going to take one out, and I'm going to show you how they work. So I took out one of the containers of my fat quarters, and here you can see my yellows. I have a couple of containers of yellows, but I set them on my little table, and so open them up, and they kind of have a handle too, but they seem to be pretty sturdy. So there you have, and they're folded pretty much the same way as my other ones were. And so I can just kind of go through here also and look and see, pull out what I need for a certain project. And I can see what I have. So I can add some more, but they do hold a lot. They do seem to work really well. And like I said, for my space, it worked well, but there's a lot of other containers and stacking ones that work great too. So it's always nice to kind of look for examples and see, where do I have to store? What is my space and the place that I can store them, and how best can I utilize that space? That's what I try to do, is how to use what I have in my space so it is very organized, and that I can use it and access it very easily. So when you're done picking them out, just shut the lid, and it snaps. And it kind of has a little handle to carry too, to lift. But I've got them packed pretty good, so I can just lay them in there, and it's easy to get out. Now I'll go on and I'll show you where I keep just a little bit more reds. And I'll show you that too. So here on the top of this bookcase that I use for storing some yardage on of my fabric, I have my Singer featherweight that I have, and I have two black ones, and I have a couple another white one. I'll show you those in my sewing room tour also, and tell you a little bit about those. But I have some red fat quarters in this little replica of a produce carrier. It's wood. I think I got it at Michael's, but I'm going to get it down so you can kind of see how I've done that too. And so you can kind of do something like that with different colors, you know, to accent your sewing room. And I don't really worry about fading too much. This room only doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight, and in the morning, if it is, I keep the blinds a little, you know, tilted so it doesn't affect my fabric, and I haven't had any problems with fading or that. Of course, the ones that I have in my walk-in closet in the other room and the drawers are fine, but I have yet to have, you know, any problems with this. But here is where I kind of a TV stand, but it also doubles as storage for me, where I can organize my cut pieces. So I will show you how I do things like 2.5 strips, 1.5 inch strips, like 2.5 inch squares, and after I've cut a fat quarter, I try to cut it into pieces of like 5 inch squares, 4.5, and I'm working on that. That's kind of a work in progress, but I also have a couple of bins also of the colors of my fat quarters that are 9 inches. So if I have that big a piece, I cut it in 9 inches, or even a strip of fabric, whole fabric, 9 inches width of fabric. So I can use that, cut strips again. Sometimes I don't have enough time to go ahead and cut all the strips, so I will just do a 9 inch one, and if I have more than 9 inch, I use 9 inch. If I have less than that, I will go ahead and cut it into strips, and kind of like what Lori Holt has said, and some of the other you know, cut your scraps, and some of the other quilt books that have kind of guided us through how to cut and store our scraps into squares and easy pieces to pick up and sew. Now you can see in some of these, and I got these containers at Target, and again, these really work for my space. So they fit in here lengthwise, and then also I measured, and so I can get the containers in this space, and that works well. So I have some empty ones because I have some cutting to do, as you can see. And like for instance, this one, it's kind of got a little project in it, and it's, I think, Lori Holt's little friendship star that she has on one of her tutorials. But I've got some things that are cut and ready to sew there. So I've taken out one of the containers that have some of the strips cut, and these are 1.5 inches. And you can see how these fit really well in this type of container, and it can only go all the way up to, I've got 2.5 inch strips cut, and also you can cut them into segments also. But this works really well. And there's some other colors. These strips were cut by my sister, and she sent them to me to work on scrap quilts, which I have used a lot of them already, and have another plan for another quilt to start after the next project that I'm working on now, which I will show you also that what I'm working on now too in the upcoming videos. But I do have plans for these, and they're 1.5 inches. And the pattern that I'm going to use, it's kind of like a scrappy heart type, and it is out of a magazine, an older magazine, but it's really cute, and it shows it in reproductions. So that's my plan for the next project. Now I'll get my 9 inch strips and kind of show you cuts and show you what those look like. Now this is from the same cabinet I just showed you with my 1.5 inch strips. And these containers are also from Target because they have a couple of different sizes. And the smaller ones do stack up. These do stack. These are my 9 inch, pretty much 9 inch I'd say, although some might be a little more, but these are all like with the fabric. So if I had used up, or in my yardage when I've cut and put on my boards, if I had an extra, I cut 9 inches and the rest into scraps, and then I have different cuts. But the 9 inches seems to work well too if you just need a lot for scrappy quilts, which I make a lot of scrap quilts. So these are greens. And in this one, I just brought out yellows to show you that too. But I also have them in the blues and pinks. Not so much in the lavenders and pinks, but this seems to have a lot of yellows and greens. Seems to gravitate to that. But you can kind of see also these. This is a really old print. This is probably one of the first ones I ever had. This little one. Really cute. What I love about reproductions is, you know, they're still making them, but they all kind of go together and just give your quilts that cute little vintage feel to it. So I'll put these back and I'll show you again how it looks when they're all back in the cabinet. So here are all the containers back in the cupboard. And you can see that I have some empty ones, but I have plans for cutting up some of the 9 inch strips into cuts that'll each go in there, so I can really have lots to choose from of sizes, like 2.5 inch squares, 3 inch squares, 5 inch squares. There's the pink little plaid, that's my bin of 2.5 inch strips, and then the 2 containers of 1.5 inch strips above that I showed you. And then the little, those were 4.5 cut by 2.5 for the star. And on the other side, and I'll show that another time, I have more containers, below some fabric that I have for my projects. I have an embroidery project that's on a quilt and some other ones, and I will show you that when I show how I do my my projects. Like I'm going to do a tutorial on the grandmother's flower garden way to do it. That's really worked out well for me, and I'll show you how I store all of those things. So hopefully in another video to come, I'll be doing a quilt room tour and some of my projects also to show and how I've organized those. If you enjoyed this video today, I hope to be bringing you a lot more about organizing and displaying your quilt projects and your quilts and stitching. So anyway, hope you tune in and join me next time, and I just want to say I appreciate all of the kind comments too. Thank you.